Welcome to the Animation Industry Podcast. My name is Terry, and usually it takes me like 15 tries to do the intro, but I'm going to try to do this one all in one take. This chat is with Laura Tofarides, who is a super stellar expert stop motion animator, but she didn't always start out that way. In our chat, she's going to share how she went from a runner working on Chuck Steele to doing everything she possibly could to become a full-time animator, and then how she actually became a full-time animator, and then went on to animate films like Early Man, Isle of Dogs, Netflix's Love, Death, Robots, and Robin, and the New Zealand TV series Kiri Lou. But first, I have a sponsored message to share with you, and it comes from my friends over at Hue, the makers of colorful, affordable USB cameras and animation software for creative teaching, work, and play. Available from huehd.com and Amazon, the new Hue HD Pro camera features 1080p image and video resolution, a built-in microphone, and LED lights. Hue's funky, flexible, plug-and-play cameras are easy to use, and they're compatible with any app that recognizes USB cameras, including Discord, Dragonframe, OBS, Twitch, Google Meet, Zoom, and many more. In fact, if you go to YouTube right now and watch my interview with Laura, I am actually using a Hue camera as my webcam, so you can see what it's like firsthand. And let me tell you, it is so easy, and I love it. Now, visit huehd.com for more information, and follow at Hue Cameras on Instagram or Twitter for news, freebies, and giveaways. So please go check them out. I've included all these links in the description of my chat. And make sure you give them some love because they've given me so much love by being long-term sponsors of this podcast. Now, let's jump into the chat. And yes, this was just one take. Hi, Laura. Thank you so much for coming on the chat.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Yeah, and you're in New Zealand and I'm in Toronto. So you're from tomorrow and I'm from yesterday. How does that's...
Yeah, we're time traveling. You know, I'm getting used to it.
How is tomorrow? Did anything happen that I should be aware of?
It's sunny. It smells like magnolias, and we've played some video games. So there's no huge wave of lava on the horizon. I think you'll be okay.
All right, good. I like the magnolia smell. Also, sorry, I just have to ask. You're wearing a scarf.
Yeah.
Is it not hot in New Zealand right now?
We're kind of coming into spring, but it's kind of like, it's like full spring, like before actual spring. So it's actually kind of cold outside, but yeah. And I'm just a very cold person.
So it's your winter right now, or like almost
yeah, so it's just completely flipped from the northern hemisphere,
yeah,
which was a terrible idea because I moved here in April, so I'd come out of like all the way through like terrible winter in the UK and lockdown, and then moved here in April just for another winter. It's like, oh my god, so I've had like a full year of like squatting over plug-in heaters right now.
Why did you move?
I'm keen for summer.
Why did you move from the UK to New Zealand?
I moved here for a job, so I'm working on a kids TV show called Kiri Lou, and yeah, it's based in Christchurch, New Zealand.
How so you're from the UK?
Mm-hmm.
England?
Yeah, from Wales.
Wales? Okay. So
Wales.
how often are you moving for work? Like in stop motion or just in general?
I mean, it kind of depends on the job, but like that's part of what attracted me to stop motion. Like for some reason, like some people it comes out of nowhere and they're like, oh damn, I didn't realize that I had to move. Whereas like for me, I was like, yes, I really want to move to go and work on things. But quite often my jobs are in Bristol, they have been in Cardiff, so both UK based, but I have worked on stop motion short film in China, so that was for 2 months in 2019, so that was kind of nuts. That was really fun.
What? So you had to move for 2 months to China and then move
back.
How do you even do that? Like, I'm assuming you don't speak any of the language. Does the studio help you move there?
Yeah, for sure. So we were actually working at a university, and there's not really much stop motion in China, and so they wanted to kind of learn those skills. So we were meant to be teaching the teachers, and then the teachers teach the students to kind of try and get an industry going there. So it was really fun. It was kind of crazy, and we had a good time. It was in Changchun, which is like really far north. It's further north than Beijing, and it's like 2 hours drive from the North Korean border. So it's a very crazy, like kind of frontier town.
Oh wow. So wait, so a university in China was like, we specifically want to develop more stop motion nationally.
Mm-hmm.
Really interesting. So they saw some like demand or need for stop motion. And so they brought you guys there. So you taught the
Yeah.
teachers how to animate in stop motion, and then for 2 months, and then left.
Yeah. So we were meant to be there for the entirety of the production, but for timing reasons that didn't work out. But so in order to kind of teach them, it wasn't just like going in and doing lessons. We were actually working on a short film all together, and so we were like building puppets predominantly. And some of my other friends there, so Jenny Kidd, who also works in the UK, she was there heading up the art department. And so there are a few of us there, just and my other friend Vicky, who was doing the costumes. And so kind of like learning through doing rather than like theoretical stuff. It doesn't really work with stop motion, it's like, okay, how do we glue the things together? Why isn't the mold working? Just all the very practical stuff.
Yeah, can you imagine just putting together a PowerPoint presentation and being like, "This is what you do."
Oh God.
So you're sitting in Wales or somewhere in the UK, and then suddenly you get an email being like, "Hey Laura, would you like to come to China for 2 months?" And like, who's calling you? Like your friend, like a studio you work with, just like the professor in China?
Weirdly, just a message through LinkedIn. And I know some people have like a bit of a love-hate relationship with LinkedIn, but I've had kind of a couple of jobs come through there, and it was a guy who was working over there producing it. So his name is Luke Tutongi, and he had been working in Poland previous to that as a producer at a studio called Semaphore.
So you didn't have any connection with this guy?
No, he was just looking through LinkedIn for people who were kind of able and willing to move there, I think. And then, you don't just say like, okay, yeah, sure, like without checking someone out. So like, you message around and ask people like, is this person legit? Is this gig legit? And I asked a few friends.
So they
knew him, and I found out that my other friends were already there. And so that gave me the confidence to move there, knowing that my friends were already there.
Okay. So you mentioned like LinkedIn has worked for you before, and you have a crazy extensive LinkedIn profile. Like I kept clicking like more and more to just see, and you have like every job you've listed, which is like amazing. So are you like actively using LinkedIn to like post your work and get stuff going and whatnot?
I don't really use like the post function. I know people quite often post like almost like a Facebook feed of their work. I mostly do that stuff on Instagram, but I keep my jobs updated on LinkedIn kind of for my own reference, because otherwise I would just forget, like, because so many of them are freelance jobs that last like a month or two. And then, if you're doing, for instance, a visa application to come to a different country. So I've just had to renew my visa here, and they ask you, please write in every job you've ever had and the dates of those jobs. And you're like, oh my God, like, can I just send you my CV? Because this is a nightmare. So you sit there and you copy paste everything from LinkedIn. But if I didn't have that, I'd just be like, I don't know, man. So it's quite useful for that as well.
Makes sense.
Boring admin reasons.
Okay, so I feel like I'm just like going in random turns with these questions. Why don't let's go back. Let's dial it back. You're working on Kiri Lou right now. Tell me about that.
So Kiri Lou is a kids TV show. So they're kind of 5-minute episodes, and they are available in Canada actually. So you should watch them. And they're also in Australia, New Zealand, and the UK on the kind of on-demand services there. And they're like, theoretically they're preschool and they're for kids, but like they're so wholesome. Like I binge watched the entire first series that was on iPlayer, because it was in the middle of lockdown and there was just like too much real life happening all around me, and then you get to go into this like magical forest of really weird animals, like, but it stops short of being like saccharine. Like I'm not a huge fan of kids TV, which might be a weird thing to say at this point, but like, the stuff that's really dumb, that's like, Sally put on a hat, well done Sally, and you're like, oh my God, my brain is going to fall out of my ear. So like, it's not that, it's kind of, it's really smart writing, it's really wholesome, and just really strange characters. And quite a lot of the episodes have just like kind of Coen brothers endings. It's like there's not like the kind of mummy message at the end, like where they've fed you the spoonful of sugar, like, okay, I've learned not to lie. It's just kind of like, okay, and now it's over, and you're like, what just happened? But like, that's why I like it. They're just kind of off the wall, funny, strange little things. So nice. Highly recommend, check it out.
Nice. And it's all like claymation too, right? Like it's all, and there's like cardboard and stuff like that. It's all on glass, I assume. It's
Yes. So there's kind of paper craft backgrounds and elements and stuff. I actually animated a petal falling off of a paper flower Friday morning, and it's like, how wonderful is that as a job? Just like a beautiful little, it's like, yeah, this is good. But yeah, so paper craft and plasticine on glass. So a lot of the characters are shot basically on green screen, but the background isn't green, it's just white, and then it's composited onto the backgrounds, and this just helps with like making it look more beautiful and adding loads of parallax and stuff.
Oh, nice, nice.
Yeah.
How many people are working on this? Because like I'm just curious myself. Like, it's 5-minute episodes. It's like very minimalistic. The character designs are like very clean, and the animation's beautiful as well. How many people are working on this? Like in total, I guess.
I think the whole crew is about 20, but we're
Oh,
split
wow.
across, like, so there's the actual production site in Christchurch where we make the show, and then we have other producers, and sound recording and stuff happens in Wellington, production happens in Auckland, so it's kind of a cross New Zealand thing. But we have 7 animators and then a team of compositors as well. And the compositing was happening in Canada for the first series, I believe, but they brought in-house compositors, and that's just made it a lot easier in terms of time zones and stuff like that. It's helped the workflow a lot.
Nice. 7 animators. That's like a very small, tight-knit team. I like that a lot. And only 20 people. That's pretty cool. So you're in UK. How did you end up in New Zealand working on this show when there's so many productions going on in the UK? Have Aardman, etc. Like, why did they take you over, I don't know, whoever is in New Zealand who can be available to animate some elephant trunks in clay versus
Well,
like we're gonna bring Laura, we're gonna help her out with her visa, like et cetera, et cetera. Like, how did that happen?
well, there's not really a stop motion industry in New Zealand, so we are the only studio here.
Yeah.
And in order to get me the visa, they had to prove that there wasn't anyone in New Zealand that could do my job. So they actually advertised it a couple of times, left the advert up for weeks, and there wasn't anyone who had the skill set, because within stop motion there's like different skill sets. There's I listened to your episode of the guy who's doing the papercraft stuff.
Yeah.
And there's other people who specialize in the pixelation, or the kind of animating coffee beans, whereas I specialize in, I guess, claymation character animation, and that's like a whole other subset of skills. So it's kind of sculpt through animation, as opposed to, we do have a couple of replacements, but mostly it's like every time they talk, every time there's lip sync, like we're sculpting those expressions.
Oh, wow. Crazy.
Yeah, and I learned those skills on my first job, which was Chuck Steele, Night of the Trampires, which
I have
I'm wearing
so
the hoodie
many questions
right now.
Oh, nice. I have so many questions about Chuck Steele, but we'll get to those.
Okay, sure. But yeah, so I guess that's why me. And also,
So you knew somebody there, or you saw the job and you applied?
Yeah, so I had a few of my friends had already gone over to work. So there's Max and Rob had already come over. My friend James Carlisle has been working here for about 2.5 years, and then also Samuel Lewis is here as well. So I mean, stop motion is so tiny. Like, I don't think I've moved to a production and not known anyone like since my first job. Like, you move somewhere and then you immediately know at least a few people. So yeah, I already knew about this production. I'd emailed Anthony a few times beforehand, and but for me, a lot of the decision making was based around COVID as well, because I don't know if you know, the situation of COVID in the UK has not been a great response, and there's been hundreds of thousands of deaths, and it's been a really horrible time for like the past 2 years, as opposed to New Zealand, which did it right. They shut down early, and they've had very few deaths comparatively. And so, for me, it was the chance to move somewhere where I could be living like a normal life for a little while, and to, just like, there've been whole days when I haven't worn a mask and I've completely forgotten about COVID.
Oh, nice.
And that's just golden,
Toronto is not, Canada is not that great either. And I really wish that was here, because I went to the park today, and you're wearing a mask on the streetcar and not everybody's wearing it, and there's like people coughing, and you're like,
yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah.
So, okay. I feel like we need to go over some of your career highlights, because let's dial it back a bit. So you mentioned Chuck Steele was the first thing, and now Kiri Lou is the second thing, but give me some highlights of what you've worked on over the years.
Okay, I'll just rattle through them as a real quick, where I came from. So I did the same thing as you, which is making weird stop motion films on my bedroom floor and uploading them to YouTube. And then I went to university at the University of the West of England, studied animation for 3 years. And then I went on to the Aardman NFTS certificate in character animation course. So that's basically like a 3-month condensed course where you just like full on learn like the super basic stuff that you should have learned at uni, but for whatever reason didn't, because you were busy learning how to be a human and how to do your own laundry.
Is that in stop motion too, or just in general character animation?
They do it in stop motion and CG, so it's run at the same time, and you kind of learn concurrently.
It's intensive.
So yeah, it's great. It's a really good course. I think they're doing some online stuff now, but that's due to COVID. But I think when they can, they'll do some in-person courses again. So yeah, I did that, and then off the back of that, I managed to get a job as a runner on Chuck Steele. And
what is a runner? What is it, like an assistant?
So I don't know if it's like a live action term, but it's the person who goes to get the coffee. It's the lowest person in the studio. Like you're just there, you're learning, you're literally like running about, you're going to buy materials, you're changing the bins, you're asking if people want coffee, that kind of thing. But whenever I had free time, then I would be in the puppet studio learning how to sculpt, because I didn't know how to sculpt at that point. And it's a sculpt through stop motion plasticine film, right? So it's quite a key skill to learn. And so part of the caveat of giving me the job saying, okay, well, if you learn how to sculpt, then we'll promote you to, maybe give you some animated shots once you're good enough. So I learned how to sculpt in between, changing bins and all that other stuff. And then I worked my way up through that job, which ended up being a 3-year film. And then at the end of that, I was a full animator, and I'm really, really proud of all the work that I did on that in the animation department. So yeah, that finished, and then I was able to jump onto the end of Early Man, which was shooting at the same time. And then after that I'd finished, I jumped onto the end of Isle of Dogs. So a lot of that was good luck, because there were 3 features shooting in the UK at the same time, and so animators at that time were like gold dust, and people were kind of clamoring to get animators on their jobs. So that was great. But there's always this kind of like feast and famine, ebb and flow of stop motion. And so after that, I was pretty burnt out after nearly 3.5 years of like intense feature animation. I went and did some volunteering in India for 2 months with an organization called VSO. That was great. It was good to just like ground myself in real life for a little while, not being in your dark box. And then I went on to do kind of puppet making and commercial animation for a little bit with my partner is Josh Flynn, who's one half of Sculpt Double. So his twin brother is Nathan Flynn. They both work together making puppets for feature films, commercials. Anyone who wants to hire them, they'll make him a nice puppet. Worked in China. I was on Shaun the Sheep at some point. So that was Shaun the Sheep Series 6 at Aardman again. So that was really cool to be asked back there. And and I was on Robin as well at the end of last year, beginning of this year. So they offered me the job on Kiri Lou in September, but because of visa problems, it's really hard to get into New Zealand at the moment because the borders are closed. So they needed to get a visa exemption. They needed to get us visas separate to the visa exemption, spaces in managed isolation, which is like the hotel quarantine. It was a whole thing.
Wow.
And so it was 6 months before I was able to come out here. And in that time, I was working on Robin, which is a half-hour Christmas short directed by Dan Ojari and Mikey Please. And I was so happy to work on that because, I've really loved Mikey's work for a long time, like Eagleman Stag and Marilyn Miller, kind of some short films that I really admire. So it was amazing to work with those guys. And then, a couple more commercials, and now I'm in New Zealand.
Wow.
Here we are.
What a crazy ride. You started out really strong. You graduated university and then immediately took a character animation course. I remember the first time I graduated university, and I was like, I don't want to look at school or think about school for another 10 years.
Yeah, I just knew that my reel wasn't very strong, and I
so
was
you
looking at
knew
stuff.
Exactly what you wanted. Did you when you were in uni the first time, you were studying stop motion specifically, or just animation?
It's just an animation course, but I specialized in stop motion.
Okay.
And I chose that university because they have a good stop motion department, and also they have strong links to Aardman because obviously they're both in the same city, and Aardman only take interns from 3 UK universities. I think it's, my university, so UE is one of the Bournemouth ones, and then possibly Edinburgh. I'm not sure.
So
if
even if
but
you
I
have
chose
natural drive and talent, they're not going to take you.
Well, they might do. That was the case back then, but there are now a lot more people who have learned stuff online and self-starters. Totally. And, if you're able to kind of demonstrate that stuff, then they'll take you. But also that helped me to get onto the character animation course, which was, quite competitive to get onto. So I was only the second year. Yeah, I was part of the second year that ran, but like the first year, the alumni from that went on to do amazing stuff. So everyone was like, damn, we want to get onto this course,
Yeah.
But the fact that they already knew me, and they not, I'm not saying that I was ever like incredibly talented. It's just literally hard work and practice and patience. But it's having like the space to do that, because stop motion takes a lot of resources sometimes, and I can understand why people would kind of get frustrated if you're working with kit that keeps falling over, or bad rigs. Like, I hate bad rigging. Is like the bane of all student stop motion. Like, just invest in like a good armature, you guys. Like, you will thank yourselves for it.
Totally. That's like a big thing, right? Because like, how do you even practice getting good at animation if you don't even have access to like or the money that you need to purchase a amazing armature and get rigs and stuff like that? Like, do you think that because you're able to jump onto Chuck Steel, which is like a crazy production in itself, like the animation is insane? I just have to ask you, so there's like shots, like the whole thing is like crazy, but there's shots where there's like probably 25 puppets all at once. Are they all composited, or are they all being animated at the same time? Like, because some of it does not look like it can be composited.
It depends which shot you're talking about. If there's only 25 in the shot, easy. Yeah, they're all in one shot. Like, we had some insane crowd shots. But there's a whole section of the film. I'm not sure exactly how much I'm allowed to say, but there's a very large crowd shot in an arena type space. And that was done kind of stadium stand by stadium stand in passes. And there was a guy called Paul Thomas who was animating that for like 3 months just on background crowds. And he was having to set climb for the whole thing, like
animating every character too by himself.
Yeah, there's no like CG background characters that are all
no, but
real,
you didn't even have like multiple animators, so he was like keeping track of like the arcs and movements and character, what happens and everything for like every character in that scene. That's insane.
I mean, it's a lot easier now. We have like a digital workflow. Like, if we were talking about back in the days when it was cinema cameras and shooting on film, that's insane. But we have Dragon Frame, we have
Listen,
we can watch back everything.
It's a lot easier now, but it's still insane. Like, I've had to animate like 3 or 4 characters at once, and like I'll forget for like 2 frames to animate one of the characters where they're supposed to go, and I'm like, oh my goodness, now I have to go back.
I mean, we have for sure all done that, but I guess I learned, like, when you're doing multiple characters, always do them in the same order. Like, so if you've got them all in a row, like, go left to right, or just pick your pattern and don't deviate from that. Otherwise, for sure, you'll forget something.
Oh my gosh, my strategy is to animate the hardest one first, because if I animate everybody else and then screw up the hardest one first and have to dial it back, it's so annoying to be like, now I got to unwalk these 4 characters because I missed the whatever. But I don't know, I guess I'm still clearly learning.
That's interesting. Like, if you have like a plate of food, do you eat the thing that you enjoy the most first or last?
Last.
Yeah, same.
So I eat the
delayed gratification. That's stop motion all over.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't like these vegetables. They're like, let's get rid of them first.
Yeah.
Versus exactly. Like one bite of each thing in succession.
In sequence. No, that's madness.
Isn't that what we're talking about with stop motion?
Well, don't treat your puppets like you treat a plate of peas, I guess. There you go. Okay, there's wisdom in there somewhere.
You go through like 3.5 years of super intense, like, that's crazy. You were just like thrown in the gauntlet, like well, obviously you like worked really hard up on Chuck Steel, and then you were working on some of the craziest stop motion productions of like our last, like, I don't know, 10 years or whatever, like Early Man, Isle of Dogs, like how, and that's a pretty short amount of time to go, because so many people, they spend years in TV animation wanting to work in feature animation and can't quite get there, etc. Like, how did that feel? And also, like, what was the thing driving you to push yourself so hard this whole time? Like,
I don't know. I a bit of a work sadist, I guess, but
okay.
Like, I mean, yeah, it is for sure like the wrong way around to do it. As you say, most people start in TV and work their way up to features, and so I was really lucky to, I was on 3 features back to back, and every day I was kicking myself thinking how lucky I was, but it's I think it's good, like being thrown in the deep end for sure. Like Chuck was all like deep end stuff. Like we didn't, because it wasn't a huge crew, we had to like learn how to rig. So we didn't have a rigging department. Like, so I learned how to rig. I now know how to do all that stuff, whereas I wouldn't if I'd have started at a bigger studio, for instance. You know, we were ADing our own units, so we all had walkie-talkies, and so I'd be like, okay, you know, is art department ready to come in because the lighting guys have finished, or you know, whatever needs doing. So you know, we were always on top of our own units, and that kind of, it makes you learn really fast, and it makes you kind of be across the whole production. Like it's not just at other larger places. Sometimes you are just expected to animate, and when you're not animating, you just have to sit there and wait. And I find that really, really tricky sometimes because it's like I want to be doing something. Maybe it's like because I've done years in retail and I have
like,
that kind of
mentality. I can
mentality.
do the lighting. I can do the puppet.
And I always want to look like I'm busy, even if there's like, even if I've done absolutely everything and all I need to do is sit there and wait, I still feel the need to look busy, which is exhausting sometimes. But yeah. But yes, I was very lucky kind of going on the 3 features, but then, you know, I'm kind of having to unlearn those insanely high levels of animation quality sometimes, like because it's not appropriate for a TV series. So, you know, when I was on Shaun the Sheep, that is still like a high quality TV series. It's like kind of 7 seconds a day, as opposed to, you know, feature film is about 3 seconds a day. Chuck Steele, because it was sculpt through facial animation, it was like if it was a close-up on one of the main characters, we were doing like 8 frames a day, you know. So you have to kind of temper these expectations and make sure that you're hitting those quality marks.
How do you not get the clay dirty or dusty? When that's like a big question for me, because like even like my silly duck wizard, like if you look at him, his face over the course of 1 minute, there's dust covering it. It's gross.
He gets stubble, right?
Yeah, he gets stubble. And he's growing a beard, but
he grows a beard. You're just constantly cleaning.
How?
Basically,
like what do you do? Is there a solution you use? Like I don't know, rubbing alcohol and plasticine? Like I've never even tried. I don't even know what to ask.
So the first thing you try and do, like if you see like a big obvious bit of crud in there, you pick it out with either a scalpel blade or a tool or whatever, and you smooth it over. If there's like big seams of it, like if you get like veins almost of like dirt, then it is worth like digging all of that out and resurfacing. You can use lighter fluid, and that will kind of take off like a thin layer on the top of the plasticine. So it is good, but it can make it kind of sticky. So you just have to like be careful when you use that, because then obviously it attracts more dirt. You can kind of, the opposite of lighter fluid is talcum powder. So you use that to kind of dust it on. So it's like an invisible layer. So if like dirt tries to land on it, there's already like an invisible layer on there, and you kind of, it blows off rather than, there's like a whole art to it. And also I should note that the lighter fluid is carcinogenic. I'm telling you that because no one told me for the first 4 years of working with this stuff. So use it carefully, and it's your
hands are like, your fingertips are like gone.
Yeah, I'm like a pineapple worker. I have no fingerprints anymore.
Are you how do you, so like you're touching it with your fingers, are you wearing gloves? Because like my hands get so dirty in stop motion because I'm touching tools, I'm touching all this stuff all the time, the puppets, fabric, like your hands just get so gross.
Yeah, your hands do get gross. You just constantly kind of using baby wipes, but again, trying not to use as many now because I know that they're mostly made out of plastic and it's not recyclable. So you know, you're kind of constantly washing your hands, wiping them. Like in the studios we have like big black kind of curtains made out of woolly stuff, which if you touch that and then touch the puppet, you'll get black crap all over the puppet. So you open the curtains with your elbows. You get quite used to doing this. It's a good idea to wipe down your dragon keyboard and your mouse and everything. Like just try and keep all this stuff as clean as you can. And yeah, like knowing that sometimes in between shots you'll have to just like resurface a puppet, like scrape it back, like just cut off like a thin layer with a scalpel, or scrape it and then just smooth it out again. And it's a lot of maintenance.
So
but it depends on the job, like whether or not that's important or not. Chuck Steele, it was very important. Like the director was very picky about the cleanliness of it, even though we were also doing post cleanup on that. Whereas on Kiri Lou, again, it being a TV series, the director isn't as bothered, and the threshold is just like kind of slightly lower. Like as long as the character is you know, doing what it should do and the emotions are on point, then that's the most important thing.
Other than everything you just said, are there other big differences with working with like clay over armatures versus like puppets on armatures? Like because like I've worked on with plasticine over like a homemade armature, and sometimes
Mm,
when you bend it, the metal like the arm like doesn't move with the metal, and now you have to like
yeah.
resculpt the whole arm on like I don't know. Is there like tips and tricks or whatever for this type of stuff? I'm just curious.
I would say only use plasticine when you absolutely have to. Like if you can use anything else, then do,
So
because
if the
it's not
whole
a,
if Chuck Steele where everything's plasticine, you absolutely have to, but otherwise don't do it.
yeah. But the thing is, it's not all plasticine. Like all of their
Right.
clothes are like
Underneath the
actual
clothes is just
clothes.
like yeah.
Yeah, the hands look like plasticine, but it's not. It's silicone that's color matched to the plasticine
Hmm.
on the head. The heads have head cores, and the plasticine is only like a couple mil thick,
Ah,
to try and keep it
yeah.
on model and stuff.
Is
And
it
a
like
lot
that
of the
at Aardman
Aardman
as
stuff,
well?
yeah. So like early man, a lot of the football players are cavemen, and so they're constantly like running about in football kits that have like short t-shirts and shorts, and so you think that their arms and legs are plasticine, but it's not. It's that they've sculpted and molded and cast out silicone things that look like plasticine. They have like deliberate thumb marks to make it look like plasticine. It's not. It's silicone, because otherwise you'd spend so much time
Yeah.
constantly resculpting. But the
Dang.
faces generally are plasticine, but then you'll give yourself like grab points on the head so that you're not like mushing it. Like if you had like a bold puppet and it's all plasticine and you grab it like that, it's going to like depress on the side of the head, right? And you don't want
Yeah.
that. So you make a wig cap out of something that will go solid like milliput, and then that means that you're able to like grab it on the head and move it around without mushing up the sculpt.
Gosh, there's just so many ridiculous things when it comes to stop motion specifically. Like not only do you have to know animation, but you have to know all this like ridiculous technical, put up with all these crazy things. Just
Yeah.
insane. So how do you like working on Kiri and Lou now that there's like no armatures, it's just on glass and you can just like shape, you can just shape clay, I guess.
It's been a learning curve, because it's kind of a 2.5D show, I guess. Like
Hmm.
you're mostly working on like a two-dimensional plane, and then but
Yeah.
sometimes they turn their heads to camera, and that means quite a lot of sculpting and like some replacements to like make that fake work. So like any 3D stuff is all faking that movement. It is fun. Like you get to kind of focus on just like the expressions and stuff.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
have there, thinking back just like over your career, have there been any like things that stood out or like skills you learned that really helped you up your game, or like things people have said to you or whatnot that like have stuck with you that you remember when you're animating? Like for me, like, I just came off my first professional gig and like I learned so much,
Mm.
but like over thinking about your career, were there things that, I don't know, that changed how you work in a better way, or just like
Oh,
snapped
I'm
and you
sure
got
there
it?
are. Like there's just like little things that you realize along the way. So for instance, if you're trying to hit a deadline and you're trying to animate fast, and you come out with a shot that, okay, you hit the deadline, but it wasn't as good as it could have been, it's like production will be happy with you, but the director won't be happy with you.
Yeah, yeah.
And at the end of the day, if they're crewing up for another gig, it's the director who makes kind of those decisions
So
most of the
screw the
time, or like the
deadline.
animation director. Not necessarily screw the deadline, be mindful of the deadline, do your best, and don't apologize if you don't hit that deadline, because there's always reasons for it, right? It's not that I am slacking off, it's not that I'm not working really hard, it's that maybe something about the rigging makes it really difficult, or something about the brief makes it really tricky to hit
Yeah.
that deadline.
So do you like say you're like halfway through a shot and you're like, oh shit, this is due tomorrow and I still need 2 days left. You go to your stage and be like, hey, production, just FYI, these are reasons beyond my control, or maybe just I'm having a hard time with this, I need more time, etc. Or do you just like push through and try to do your best, and then I don't know, somebody comes in, they're like, you
It's
done your shot, and you're like, give me more time.
So at Aardman, the assistant director will come in and kind of ask you about kind of 3 or 4 p.m. every day, like when you think you'll finish your shot. And so at that point, you can say, okay, yeah, sure, I'm on time. Like I'll finish it by 2 p.m. tomorrow. Or actually, no, this is taking a lot longer. It might be 2 more days. And at which point, they might ask you like, okay, well, how can we make it easier for you?
Yeah.
That's what I really love about stop motion. And some people don't like this aspect of it, but it's actually the teamwork. And I never thought that I would say that, especially when I was in uni and I was doing group projects and I'm the only one doing any work. And it's like, oh my God, this is a nightmare. But actually, once you get into a professional setting, everyone is there because they are good at their job. They've worked really hard to be good at their job. And so it's like, it's not my problem, it's our problem. And I can call in other departments to help me work out that problem, you know?
So you told me before that you are, well, maybe you can just tell me now, what are you actively working towards right now? So you're an animator right now, but what is your, like, you know, you've been doing this for quite a few years. Do you have a overarching goal, a career goal, or just like a creative goal you're trying to achieve?
Yeah, so I kind of want two things. I want to be a superstar animator, but I also want to move into
You already
directing,
are a
you know.
superstar animator.
No, I'm not. I'm not. There's always, you know, more to learn and stuff. And, you know, I've always wanted to work at
Okay, you're a
Leica.
very humble superstar animator.
um, yeah, so I'm trying to kind of always improve, I guess. Yeah, so I'd like to work at Leica as an animator just because I know that it takes all your skills to the next level.
Yeah.
And like all of the resources at your disposal there.
Okay.
But yeah.
Before you tell me about the second thing, what does it take to, so like, for instance, you worked on Isle of Dogs, which is like a super world-class renowned animation, amazing stop motion thing, and Aardman, which is like world-class animation as well. Like, why could, if you were applying to Leica right now, do you think you'd have a good chance to get in one of their productions, or do you still feel like you need to up your game in some aspects to get there?
I mean, there's always stuff you could learn, but I think a big hurdle for many people is the visa.
Yeah.
And so in order to work in America, there's a certain visa you have to get, which means that you have to demonstrate that you are better than any American at that job, that they have searched through all of the people in America and that they can't find anyone who can do that job. And therefore they're allowed to hire someone externally. And so, you know, there's obviously a very high threshold for that, and rightly so. You know, you shouldn't be taking jobs from people who live there. And so you have to kind of really get together a lot of different credits from different productions and prove yourself. So, you know, that's kind of what I've been doing since I started, is getting together those credits to prove that I can do it and that I am worth the hassle of, you know, all the border stuff and everything else in order to do that. So it's not always just a case of animation skill. You know, international politics come into play, and which country you happen to be from, whether or not their countries are friends with the American peoples at that time. You know, all of that plays into it.
Have you attempted to work at Leica as of yet, or are you still kind of I don't know, brewing? Is that the right word?
I've had some conversations with people there, and I know what stuff that I need to demonstrate and to work on. And, you know, I think I probably do have those skills at this time, but I haven't had the time to literally like get into a test animation booth to show it.
Gotcha.
You know.
So what, if you don't mind me asking, what is one thing that you need to work on to get there?
Well, I need to be able to demonstrate like kind of subtle acting on wands, which, you know, I'd say that I do have that stuff from Chuck Steele, but because Chuck Steele isn't out, I'm not allowed to use any of that stuff on my show reel, which is quite frustrating. But so, you know, I was allowed, you know, after I worked on Shaun the Sheep, I asked whether or not I could go back there and just like have a puppet and a test unit and, you know, just do some animation. And they're really kind enough to let me do that for a couple of weeks. That was in March 2020. So I only had a couple of weeks before I had to then leave, and everyone went home for a very long time. But, you know, it's just about being able to kind of demonstrate things. It's a checkbox, you know, can you do runs? Can you do crowd shots? Can you do emotional acting? Can you do it on singles? You know, because my current show reel, I'm aware that a lot of it, or most of it, is on doubles. And so in terms of demonstrating that skill, I don't have it. I haven't demonstrated it yet. So yeah, it's just a case of like getting the time to plan out animations and get it on the reel.
Have you considered doing their internship? Like, would you, if you did their internship, would you do the necessary exercises that they want to see to work full time there? I don't know.
I mean, I believe that the Leica internships are only open to people who were in education, and possibly only people in education in America. I might be wrong about that. Whenever I've looked, that's been the case. I know that sometimes they do have certain schemes from other countries.
This is just random. I'm just thinking off the top of my head. Would it make sense to like work, like get hired at a different studio in the States just to be there on a visa and then apply to Leica?
Yeah, Yeah, for sure it would. So I believe there's three features shooting in Portland at the moment, but they're all quite kind of late stage productions. And like I'm aware that, you know, I'm busy here for at least
Yeah,
another
yeah,
6 months.
you're
So
currently
it's not going to
working.
work out timing wise.
Here
And
I
you
am,
know,
like, get to America, and you're like, I'm still on a job here.
yeah, and like, you know, the other productions there that I've seen that are kind of longer running have tended to be like TV shows. And again, I think it might be difficult from a visa perspective to justify bringing in someone else to work on a TV show.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, because there's a slightly lower level of animation required, you could probably get Americans to fill those roles.
So this leads me to a question which I kind of have about, because like from my perspective, looking at your work, like you've done absolutely amazing stuff. Like I remember, actually, I think I became aware of your work when you did that Skillshare class with like fire and stuff, which is really cool. But like, do you reach a level of, I guess, talent or skill where you are sought after versus like grinding to get those jobs? Like I know a lot of it is connections as well, and does that play into this sought after versus grinding? Like,
Yeah, it is all who you know,
yeah,
unfortunately. And that sounds really depressing, but you know, it is as easy as getting an internship somewhere, or you know, even like knowing that someone who works at a studio is maybe freelancing at another studio, and maybe you can get work experience at that other studio in order for that person to know you to then recommend you for a junior position or something like that. It really is like just the first foot in the door is the hardest part. Everything after that point just kind of started snowballing for me.
how did you get your internship at Chuck Steel in the first place? Because like I'm just wondering, you know, say I'm listening to this right now and I'm like, you know, I want to be like Laura when I grow up. How do I even get an internship where I can like learn so much on the job?
Well, I managed to get an internship on Shaun the Sheep movie, the first one. So that was at Aardman, and that's kind of when I started to get to know people. And again, that was kind of because of my university's connections. But you know, I'd chosen my university specifically because I knew they had those connections. But it doesn't have to be, you don't have to plan 4 years in advance, you know, you can just find out what is shooting at the time. And quite often there'll be training schemes, you know, in the UK, there's something called Screen Skills, and they help everyone in the UK screen sector. There's like training funds. You can go on courses and they'll pay for them. They'll help you get kit and they'll help you get placements on different productions as well. So in each country, there'll usually be some kind of like national film board. Check those out first, because they are going to be able to like, you know, talk to the producers of the big films and sort those out, as opposed to like just an individual being like, hey, I really like animation, can I come work on your film? It's quite difficult to get someone's attention.
Totally. And like that was my whole thing when I was like coming out of high school looking for work. I was just like, phone book. I literally went in the phone book and I was like, what animation studios are there? And I was like searching under like animation. There was like nothing. I don't even know what animation studios were called. And like I found a couple and called them and whatever. And they're like, oh, you're like 17 years old calling me, like goodbye. So but it makes total sense. Like there are so many resources. It's just like you need to like put yourself out there, talk to people who kind of have some in already and get some advice, I guess, and just
and it doesn't even have to be in like the role that you want, or even in the department that you want. Like I did a lot of work experience at university in 2D, which I knew that I didn't want to be a 2D animator, but those connections have since paid off for me later on. You know, I worked with a guy called Sam Morrison who ran Evil Genius Studios. I did some work with him, and you know, he's recently been helping me script edit on my short film, you know, and he works at Aardman. And like it's a whole ecosystem, you know, like the animation worlds in each different city, each different country, generally they'll know each other, even if they're not like, oh, I'm a CG person, I'm a stop motion person, we don't talk to each other. Of course they talk to each other.
Totally. Before you, well, anyways, just backtracking a little bit, you went to India to volunteer for a couple months and you said you reached a level of burnout. Like, can you talk me through how it felt to feel burnt out from your dream, and did that fuel your decision to like take a big break?
Yeah, it did. I mean, it was kind of a calculated break because I knew at that point that all three features in the UK had finished, and so there probably wasn't going to be a lot of work around at the time. So you know, you choose when you take your holidays. But yeah, I mean, for sure, burnout is real, and working on features can be like brutal. It depends on the job as to what the hours are, but they can be like,
what do you mean brutal?
Like just in terms of time, like it is all work and no play sometimes, even if it is like your favorite job. It's like, you know, those like like freshman like beer things that they do with the funnel, and they put the beer in. But imagine the beer is animation. It's like, oh, you like animation? Have some more animation. He's just like, I don't know, please stop. Like, I just need a break.
So you're working long hours every day and like weekends. Yes. And like,
yes. Yeah. And just like physical tiredness, like if you're
so
animating for 8-10 hours a day, it's physically tiring.
Yeah, of course. But what if you're like, listen, I'm already working 10 hours a day, I want to take Friday afternoons off. Like, is that not allowed? Like, could you even say that? Like, is that even a thing? Like, because you're like, listen, my mental health, my physical health, like production's behind, I'm working extra hours, but I personally can't, like, I want to take a step back. Like, can you say that?
It's tricky because I think it depends on your kind of level of seniority as to how acceptable that is sometimes, and it shouldn't be, because people of all ages have mental health problems or whatever. But when I spoke up and said that I needed to take time off to go and see like a counselor, they were totally fine with me doing that, and they didn't make me work the hours back, and that was fine. And I think it's getting better now. I think since the pandemic, it's not so much that you can work from home, although I guess some management people could work from home, but some people have kids and they work kind of reduced hours, and they go and pick up their kids after school, so they only work till like kind of 3 p.m. and that's been the case for years and years now, and I don't think that's like held those people back necessarily, but they are quite senior members of the animation team. So
what are you doing now if you're doing something to like manage, not reaching burnout, or like, keeping this going for the long run?
I mean, I think I've just become better at realizing when I'm becoming burnt out. Like, I think especially on the commercials that we've done puppet making for, we will have periods of like maybe 3 days at the end where we're just not sleeping. We'll do 3 all-nighters back to back, and then we'll get a coach to London, and then we will start work on the actual commercial, doing the maintenance. And I just became like physically sick. I just got like a crazy migraine. I couldn't do anything, and that was because I was just completely exhausted, and so I just had to go back to the Airbnb and lie down. I came back to work the next day and felt a lot better having just slept. But I'm aware of when, if I start getting a headache, that headache will lead to nausea if I don't stop working. Everyone kind of knows this stuff, but it's when you've actually had those adverse reactions on set publicly in front of everyone, you're like, okay, I don't want to do this anymore.
So you start feeling a headache and you're like, okay, I need to like go home, take a rest, pop some Advil.
Yeah, like, exactly. I mean, I went and did a talk. Was it a talk? No, I was giving feedback at a university, and this was in the middle of when we were doing a puppet build for a commercial, and I'd driven to Bristol to do it. So, that's like an hour's drive. I got there quite early in the morning, and I could just feel myself like not feeling great, and I had like a headache, but I was like, they're paying me to be here. I'm a professional. I'm gonna just power through. I was going and throwing up in between seeing every student.
Oh my goodness.
And just coming back out and pretending I was fine and then giving feedback, like, don't let it get to that level. And that's because I hadn't slept properly. I was working all hours of the day. And so, yeah, that was like a couple of weeks before the same thing happened on the same commercial when we take them to London, and I just felt unwell. So I think it's for me realizing that I don't have infinite levels of energy. Like when you're a student, like I'm such like a yes man, like I always have been, and having that mentality of like wanting to, yeah, sure, I'll do work experience for you, yeah, okay, I'll take on this job, yeah, and never wanting to say no to people. And the realization that you are actually just like at the base of it like a human who needs like sleep and food.
Your health is like, please say yes to me once in a while.
Yeah, exactly. Like, don't take on the job that's going to take up all of your weekend and pay you like £10,
Yeah.
So
right?
These are important lessons.
Have you, so like, okay, say you're, maybe it's not your situation now, but like, say you're working in a studio and they're like, listen, we need you to work 12-hour days and weekends. And they're really pressuring you, like production's coming in all the time being like, is your shot done? Is your shot done? Can you work this weekend? How are you managing? Are you managing that? How are you saying no, but also yes, because you don't want to be that person who's like not part of the team anymore, even though it's like kind of a toxic thing. Yeah. But at the same time being like, listen, I need to take care of myself. And also this is not, this is not something that's healthy for any of us.
it can be tricky having those conversations, and it depends who you're talking to and whether or not they are understanding of that. I mean, a couple of times when I've had to do like, you know, working till 9 p.m. every night and working weekends, I kind of went into that job knowing that that's what that was, because they're at the end of a project, and that, you know, I'm young-ish and I don't have kids and I'm able to do those overtime hours, and, you know, they pay you for them. So I kind of, and I was fine doing that, you know. I think it's difficult when it's a longer project. So there were definitely times on Chuck when we were behind, because it was a sculpt through animation process. And so, you know, we were all just working half-hour lunches. We were trying to do extra time whenever we could. And knowing that there wasn't an end to that, it's just like we are perpetually behind. It gives you this kind of like, oh my God, is this my life now kind of feeling. So I think having like defined periods of overtime and then having a defined time when that will finish is really useful, like from a production perspective, for everyone to know where they stand, you know. And, you know, so a couple months ago here, I got my first cold in like 2 years, which was terrifying because, you know, COVID has meant that we wash our hands constantly and whatever. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to die. Like, honestly, this cold knocked me out for like a month. It was awful. So I wasn't able to do any overtime. It was just me like dragging myself into work, and I was able to do my day's work, but I wasn't able to do anything on top of that. And I think people were understanding of that. You know, it's, those conversations happen on an individual basis, and you just have to navigate them at the time, I guess.
Gosh, okay, that makes sense. Let's start talking about your dream that you're working on right now, because that's really exciting for me. So can you tell me a little bit more about that and what you're doing?
So I would like to move into directing.
Why?
Why? Oh God, that's a hard question. Well, for me, for the longest time, I didn't think that stories that I came up with or that I told were worth telling. And I thought that, you know, why would anyone want to listen to anything that I've come up with? Because I have like a documentary filmmaking background as well. And I always thought, like, you know, reality is stranger than fiction. Like, why would anyone care about some crappy story that I've come up with, you know? But I realized that that was coming from like a place of fear and feelings of inadequacy, and that, and also working as an animator for both for good directors and for directors who maybe weren't so great, gave me the confidence to say, you know what, I think I can do this. You know, if they
like,
can do it,
this
for sure I can do
this. I can do a better job.
Yeah. And so, you know, I just want to really challenge myself to do that. I went and did the interview process for the NFTS MA in directing animation, which is like, it's an amazing course. It's a 2-year course just in directing animation, and the stop motion stuff that comes out of there, or all the animation that comes out of there. It was amazing. In the end, I didn't end up doing that course, but I think going through it and seeing what it took was kind of a real catalyst for me. And then I applied for some short film funding from Film Cymru Wales, which is kind of an offshoot of the BFI in the UK. And I ended up getting that funding. So I'm currently making a short film in the shed here, while also working full time. And with like huge props to my partner, Josh, because he is doing a huge amount of the work here at the moment, because, you know, obviously I'm working on Kiri Lou, and then he's out in the shed. Like today we're clearing out the shed. The shed is becoming a studio, and so it's an exciting day.
So so you felt compelled to tell your own stories for a very long time. Like, you have ideas, you have stories in your mind, and you want to put them out there, and then you got the confidence from working in the industry to be like, listen, the stories that I'm being compelled to tell, I can realize them. And then your path or strategy to become a director was to take this course and then apply to a fund to make your own film.
Well, I ended up not doing the MA, but it was kind of like when I got the email saying that I hadn't got a place on the course, I kind of decided to do it anyway, just by myself. You know, and I think it's good. It's really difficult because it's like, what is the point of film? What is the worth of short film, of short animation? Like, why would someone put themselves through like 2 years of working in a shed by themselves for no money? And it's a question that I grapple with a lot, but it's like, whenever I see an amazing short animation, it completely like blindsides me, and I just think, oh my God, like this person, they get it, you know? And you're like, it really gives you like a human connection to another human being that you have never met. Like, and I can't remember who I'm quoting here, but film as like an empathy machine.
Hmm.
And I think that's really important, you know, when
Wow.
like everyone is so divided and like increasingly more and more divided, it's like it's showing someone a story from someone else's perspective.
Totally.
And,
Well,
you
storytelling
know,
is like as old as time itself.
yeah.
What is, so I love this, that you're doing this. I think that's phenomenal. And I love that you're like making stuff in your shed. That to me, that's like storytelling at its heart, you know, like, you know, you have big productions like Pixar, Disney, et cetera, and there's hundreds of people working on it. But like for me, like the sweet spot of like film is when you know that somebody is like crafted this themselves and put their heart and soul into it. And you can like feel that when you watch it. What maybe a weird question, but like, what is success to you from this process? Like, I feel like you've already hit success because you wanted to become a director. Now you're directing something, but like, obviously you're putting yourself through this to see it through to the end. What is
Mm.
success? Is it, do you want to, you know, become known for directing and then work on TV shows and films directing, or continue to direct short film, or just like go the festival circuit and
Yeah.
see how that, like, what is it? What is this? What is success for you?
I mean, I think I see this film as like a stepping stone to bigger things. And that's
Yeah.
kind of, that was kind of the brief of the funding as well, actually, is like wanting to develop people eventually towards features. You know, specifically like they want Welsh features because it's Welsh funding.
Yeah.
And so it is a Welsh film. And there's a little bit of Welsh language in there as well. But for me, yeah, I mean, I'd love to direct features one day. Like that's a big lofty ambition.
Like when you
Um,
say direct features, like stop motion features?
Stop motion features, but also I think just in terms of thinking about how long a stop motion feature takes and how long a human lifespan is,
Yeah.
it might be a good idea to do some live action stuff as well.
Right.
just
But also, okay,
just so
so
I can
like,
tell as many stories that I want to. You know, I need like 10 lifetimes to do everything that I want to do.
so this, but this is interesting. You want to tell your own stories, but you want to become a director to do so. Why not a writer? Because like a director, a lot of directors aren't telling their own stories. They're, you know, they're
Hmm.
creating the vision and executing it among the animators or the actors or whatnot. Versus, and like working with the writer. So like,
Hmm.
where is directing your sweet spot because it is so tied to like the animation and story at the same time? Like,
Yeah, I guess I don't see much of a distinction for me. Like a director is, I guess, a byword for writer director.
yeah.
I'd never really thought of directing other people's stories, but you know that's probably a good idea because I find the process of story writing torturous, like
Yeah.
and revisions and stuff. Like I hate them, but for sure, like the draft that we have now, it's the final draft is much better than the first one that we had like 2 years ago. So um, you know, it's all a process. But yes, I mean, you know, at some point I'd love it if, yeah, people were coming to me with their stories and I was like, this is an amazing story. Yes, of course we'll help you tell it. Like that would be amazing as well. It's just the short that I'm working on at the moment, it's just an idea that's been kind of gestating in my head in like a really sporadic form for like years, and I just need to get it out. It's like it's a gestation and a birth and I need to get it out of my system. And then I will take stock and work out what I want to do after that.
I love this. You're so driven, like you're working full time in another country and you applied for funding and you're creating another film in your shed. Like I love this. This is amazing. This is phenomenal.
It would be a lot easier if we were making it in the UK because I have people
Yeah.
who owe me favors.
Yeah.
So
And
they're
then
getting
in
away
like,
scot-free right now.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you also have like this weird timeline looming over your head because you're only on this, you're only on this contract for like 6 months or something. So you're like, I have to get this done
Yeah.
now because
Yeah.
then I have to pack up and move everything.
Exactly.
Crazy.
So, I mean, that's quite a good thing though, because I mean, a lot of some other people who've had this funding, like these things have dragged on for like 4 years or something. And I don't want it to be that. Like I said, I want it
Yeah,
to be
yeah,
a stepping stone. I like being concise in
yeah.
animation. Like I do a lot of like pre-selection and I've helped organize the Cardiff Animation Festival or co-organize with a group of other people. And, you know, we watch a lot of films
Yeah.
and I just think brevity, you guys, like don't have like a 3-minute intro before the title even comes
Totally.
up. Like
You're
it
gonna
drives me crazy. So, you know, I really want to tell a concise story.
you're gonna be their example in the future. They'll be like, Laura did hers in 6 months and it was concise. And versus these other guys, they're still working on it. It's been years. Like,
Well,
Amazing. Well, thank you for sharing your journey. You know, I've heard everything from the start to where you are now. Is there anything else that you wanted to kind of share maybe as we're wrapping up, or like advice you want to bestow that helped you, or just, I don't know, what you had for lunch? It's not even lunch there yet.
It's not even lunchtime.
What you're going to have for lunch?
Oh man, I'm going to have a cheese and ham sandwich with hummus. I'm trying to think of any wisdom that I have. I know there's I get questions from students sometimes asking, like, you know, how did you get to do what you're doing now? How do I do that? And really, I think it is about, just getting to know people. And that comes in the form of work experience, internships, you know, and really like fostering those connections. Yeah. People use the word networking and it sounds like such a dirty word, and it sounds like that scene in American Psycho where they're all like swapping business cards, you know, and like animation people aren't like that. They're all like strange, hunched over weirdos, and they're as awkward and weird as you. So don't be scared of them and talk to them. They're nice, and, you know, just make friends with people. That's essentially what networking is, like, just make friends and be excited about other people's work. Talk to other people, even if it is online, you know, even if COVID is forcing you to stay in your house right now, like chat to people on Instagram, like you and me. We didn't know each other and now we're just having a random conversation, you know. Networking feels gross, whereas just like having a chat, that feels fine, you know.
Just have a chat. I love that. Just have a chat. You want to get to know some people, just have a chat. I love it. For sure. Cool. Is there anything else you wanted to share as we're wrapping up?
Can't think of anything. Don't eat yellow snow.
Don't eat yellow snow. Do you even ever get snow in New Zealand? I mean, it's not where you're from.
There was some in the mountains. Yeah, okay. we went to Aoraki, Mount Cook, a couple of weeks ago, and there was some snow, and then it got really, really cold, and there was some ice on the footpath. We were just like sliding down, like making a human chain, trying not to fall over. That was really fun. So yes, there is snow here. I need to do some more exploring. It's like I came back from China having not left the city that we were in.
Oh my god!
We were there for like 2 months. Yeah, so I need to actually get out and see some of New Zealand. So if any of your listeners want to suggest some amazing stuff to do, I'm based on the South Island, let me know.
Okay, so have a chat, go out and explore. Love it.
Yes, do something other than animate.
And do something other than your dream of animating. Well, thank you so much, Laura, for coming on the chat. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you. I'm so happy we chatted.
No worries. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you. And if you're listening and you want to get in touch with or follow Laura, you can do so by reaching out to her Instagram, which is Laura Tofarides. Did I say that right?
Close. Laura Tofarides. Yeah.
Laura Tofarides, or her website, which is lauratofarides.co.uk. And I'll include both those links in the description of this chat. And thank you so much for listening. And that's all for now. Okay, bye. The music for this podcast was composed by Will Farmer and the graphics by Daniel Abensauer. I encourage you to look them up if you enjoyed their work.